Hi, thanks for coming. This is going to be a talk about why bad media has better ideas and how this bad media can make you a better game designer. So first off, who am I? Hi, I'm Cam. I'm a narrative designer and writer. I recently graduated from NEU, Northeastern University, and I'm going to start my first game design job at Shell next week, which is very exciting. I don't like putting pictures of myself, so enjoy these pictures of my cat in various hats, who may or may not be making a guest appearance. He's currently occupied, but yeah. But anyway, I want to explain what I mean by bad media, since this is such a subjective topic. I'm mostly going to be touching on shows, games, and movies. I'm including more than just games in this talk, just because overall, I think designers can learn a lot more from looking at media outside of games when it comes to designing them. And then these on screen are just some criteria that I have when I'm considering things to be bad media. It's obviously not an exhaustive list, and a lot of times I just go based on the vibes of media in general, since it is, again, so subjective. So here are some of the vibes in question. Not all of these have I played or watched, but going based off of people I know, online discussions, and just generally what I know from these media, they fit the vibes. And here I want to explain the difference between bad media and problematic media. Problematic media can also be bad, and bad media can also have problematic elements, but in general, I want to stray away from talking about overall problematic media. When I'm talking about bad media, I'm thinking of things that are fun and aren't intentionally or even not intentionally hurting a specific group of people. Problematic media in general is almost always harmful to a marginalized group of people, or it will highlight these stereotypes and tropes, or both. A lot of problematic media also tends to have its entire concept or the execution of said concept be harmful, rather than having like small segments of it that might not be great. I also think it's possible for media to have problematic elements without explicitly being problematic, like with how D&D has its issues with how its race and class system are built into the game, and how the Persona series and kind of Atlas in general doesn't really handle LGBTQ plus issues all that great, even though in Persona 5 Royale they did fix that weird interaction. It's still very important to hold media accountable for these issues, though. So here I have some examples of bad media versus problematic media. On the left, I have the Wall Simulator in Willy's Wonderland, where if you know me in real life, Willy's Wonderland is my new favorite movie. It is a Five Nights at Freddy's-esque movie starring Nicolas Cage. He spends one night at Willy's Wonderland cleaning it in exchange for a local mechanic to fix his car for free. And then, surprise, surprise, animatronics are evil. But the whole time, he's just very, like, chill about the whole thing. He doesn't seem to care, and the whole movie is played as if Nicolas Cage is playing a silent protagonist. He has 0 lines in the entire movie, and he's just doing his thing while other things annoy him and he has to deal with it. I highly recommend it. My friend actively yelled at me, not actually, but yelled at me after we were done watching it. And then Dalal Simulator is a stocks game where you just are trying to earn Dalals. It's really weird. It's made with stock images. The whole gameplay is you're watching this arrow go across a graph that represents the value that you can buy and sell as. But the developers also didn't check to see if the number can be less than 0, so you can get paid for selling. It's amazing, truly. Although it's not on Steam anymore, I don't know why it was taken off, but you can play it for free in browser. But then on the other side of problematic media, I have Super Seducer and Emily in Paris. Super Seducer is outwardly it looks like a parody about how harmful pickup artist mentality is. You make choices talking to women, trying to get their number or whatever. A lot of the options are normal, some are really uncomfortable to choose, and then some are wrong, but in the almost cartoonish way, like something that no normal person would do to another human. And at first glance, it seems like really cool, but the creator is also a dating coach, and a lot of the still wrong choices come off as very harmful and creepy, but in a more realistic way. But it's not really told that that's creepy. It's just like, hey, don't do that, but not why you shouldn't do that. And Emily in Paris, it's a new Netflix show. It's about a white woman from America who goes to Paris to work as a social media manager for some company. She doesn't speak French, she doesn't understand the culture, and she frankly doesn't really understand social media, but is still the greatest new thing to happen to this company, which, well, it's not great. And then even outside of that issue, it has a lot of stereotypes and issues with how it portrays French culture. I haven't seen it, but I've read a few articles about it, and yeah, it's not too great. But anyway, let's actually jump into it. So if you have not guessed, I really love bad media. I like to watch it, to play it, to watch streamers play it, just everything. I've probably seen most of the January release horror movies because there was nothing else to do when I was in high school. And then I've also willingly bought and played a lot of these negative review horror games. Well, Fading Hearts isn't a horror game, but and also made my friends play it. We played Bad End, great time. And then we'll also subject my friends and family, as I said, to watch or play things with me. I'm by no means an expert in anything, but I think I'm more or less qualified to talk about this concept. So let's answer the question, what is so special about bad media? And I think lots of things. I watch and play a lot of it, and there's a few things I've noticed that tends to make it very enjoyable. They can make you laugh at the absurdity of it if it's taking itself too seriously or if it's not taking itself seriously enough. You can tell other times you can tell a lot of heart and soul went into a piece of media, or it was just something that had a very interesting concept but was done poorly for one reason or another. This kind of media can do things that can make the viewer think, oh, that was kind of cool. I like how they did that thing. But then literally 30 seconds later, you'll be appalled by the dialogue that a character has said. I think the best bad media is probably the one where as soon as you finish it, you call up all your friends and you're like, I have what we're going to watch at the next movie night or play at the next game night. It's something so awful that you just need to share it with everyone. And just tell everyone and make everyone else look at this thing, even though it was awful. Like, for instance, I've been trying to get, for the better year or so, my close friends and previous roommates to watch the Cat in the Hat live action movie with me. And every time it was met with, no, we're not doing that. Please stop asking. But I recently just got my partner to watch it with me. I recommend it. I think it's hilarious. It's a really weird movie when you think about the fact that it was Cat in the Hat book adapted, but I love it all the same. And yeah, I'm sure you're all curious. Okay, cool. You like bad media. How does it actually have better ideas? Does it actually have better ideas? And I would argue yes. Not in every case, because some are just bad things that we can laugh at. But in a lot of them, I think so. So let's look at a few. And y'all can laugh at me later. But the Bye-Bye Man, I saw this in theaters when it first came out, and it was like 2014 or something. And I actually kind of liked it. The acting isn't good. The story is wild. Too many ideas and not enough time. And the scares weren't always really effective. They tried to do jump scares and somehow messed that up. But it's a bad movie. But I still think it has its merits in the things it was trying to do. For those who don't know what it is, it's a movie about a curse, I think. They're not really clear what the antagonist is, if it's like a physical ghost thing or just a curse, that causes insanity and hallucinations and eventually will end up in death. If you think or say the name The Bye-Bye Man, it's extremely stupid, but an interesting concept, a curse that you can't escape because saying it or even thinking about it causes it to get a better hold on you. And even entering the movie, you have an idea that it's probably going to end in some sort of tragedy, just based on how we know about the curse. Like, how do you stop yourself from thinking about something? I don't know about y'all, but once I'm like, I'm not thinking about it, all I do is think about it. And the more you think about it, the more you say it, the stronger of a hold it has on you. And to give the movie credit where it's due, they were able to make the actors look like they were losing sleep and touch with reality and act a bit more realistic, in my opinion, from what I remember, of more realistic, what did I say? Showing characters that are being driven to insanity, more than some movies. I know there are some movies where they'll have hallucinations, but they're just fine. Like, nothing about them physically changes. It's just the way they act might be a little different. In this movie also, the way it portrays the hallucinations and everything, it tricks the audience in the same way it does the main character that you follow. Usually you're looking from the perspective of Elliot, which is the main dude or whatever. So when a hallucination is happening, it's not trying to be like, oh, is it actually happening? Da, 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 da. You're seeing it from the character's perspective, so you're as confused as he is. And it also shows slowly the characters will get more like pale and like get more bags under their eyes. So you see them physically changing due to the stress as well. And then the other example I have is Deadly Premonition. I'm sure a lot of you know about it. It is fairly infamous. I think it just came out on Switch. Maybe not just, but it's out on Switch. And it's just a game that has everything going on at all times. It's glitchy and it's awkward. And I think I've seen 15 minutes of gameplay and I have no idea what this game is, but I want to play it so badly. The game at its most basic is you play as York, an FBI agent, and you're investigating a murder in this open world survival horror game. The open worldness includes a day-night cycle. Characters and stores have their own schedules. York has his own sleep food meter. You can drive to places and you can actually like break your car. You have to pay for it to be repaired. I think when you're interviewing people, if your suit's dirty, you like lose points or something. And then there's also like combat sections. That's like a supernatural-esque thing. I don't think they're zombies, but they look like zombies or something. And it's a third-person combat section, but you're also trying to, at the same time, collect evidence for whatever scene. I don't know. There's a lot. And all these mechanics fit together very awkwardly and weirdly. It's buggy. Things don't feel the best. But the way it puts these mechanics together, I haven't seen a lot of times in survival horror explicitly. I know there are open world-ish horror games like Pathologic, I think it is. I started playing that. That's great. Very open world. You just do things. And this game would need a lot of refinement and bug fixing. But it's still a very interesting way to portray it. It makes the world feel more alive. You have to talk to characters to solve the murder. It's kind of like, it feels like if you took like LA Noire and then mixed it with Pathologic, that's kind of feels like it. It's very interesting, even though it's not great, not done the best. And I could go on and on about different interesting concepts in media for various other things, but we have 30 minutes and I've talked for 15. But okay, sure. Some media has cool ideas, whatever. How does this apply to game design? So before we go on, I want everyone to think about the first big game they made, whether that be a bigger team, a bigger scope, a bigger idea, just a bigger thing than just like a 48-hour game jam or something. And now when you were in the design concept of this thing, think about the comparisons you had and the inspirations you had for that game. Not going to be surprised, most of the things y'all are probably thinking of are these successful things, even if it's a small success. They don't all have to be necessarily big budget AAA games. It could just be a nice small success of an indie game. And this makes sense. You're going to think about the successful things when you're making a thing. If you're looking for a budget and you're going to publishers and you're giving your pitch deck, you're not going to want to be like, I'm making this 3D platformer game. It's going to be so cool. It's going to be just like Bubsy 3D. For those who don't know, Bubsy 3D, came out around the same time as the original Crash Bandicoot, I think, and it didn't do well at all. I think it was like untextured in some places. However, if you are making this 3D platformer, playing a game like Bubsy 3D instead of, let's say, Crash Bandicoot, similar mechanics, but still different. One did well, one didn't. Playing this game might still help you. It's buggy, it's frustrating. The art is really weird because some areas like are untextured, but like Bubsy's character model is like really high res, I think. But playing it might help you better understand why things are frustrating. Like why do these jumps feel bad? Why is this camera angle wrong? What about this movement is frustrating to the point where you don't want to keep playing? Looking at these things might help you rethink some of your own mechanics, or like realize how some of your mechanics may come off to players. This is also something you can find in playtesting, but playtesting takes time, sometimes money if you're paying your playtesters, and also just finding people who can give good feedback. But now I know most people are thinking, why subject myself to playing a bad game like Bubsy 3D or whatever to feel out mechanics when I could play something better, like as I was saying before, Crash Bandicoot came out around the same time and is in the same genre. Why should I bang my head against the wall when something better already exists and I can look at that? I'm going to make something that's good, right? It's going to be on par or better than the good version of what I'm trying to make anyway, right? Good versions of these games, this media, they already exist. So why should we analyze things that we are known to be bad? And here's where my hot take comes in. But when you end up looking at the successes of others, that is how I think bad media is created. If we only look at the success of other games and ignore the failures, we're not really going to learn. And here, I'm not talking about necessarily personal failures, because I'm sure we all learn from our own personal failures, or at least hopefully, as well as successes. We know what we can do better next time. We know what went wrong because we personally were making it, right? But when you're looking at the failures of games and other media just as a whole, I completely lost my train of thought. When you look at games and other media failures as a whole, there's a difference there because you personally weren't involved in making something. If a game flops or a movie doesn't perform well, you can guess as to why it didn't really work, but you won't really know until the creator says something. But it's still good to look at them and analyze them if it's within the same realm of what you're trying to make. If you're trying to make a horror game and you are only looking at good horror games or good horror movies and shows, you might not understand as well what made that scare what made that actually scary, versus if you're looking at something bad, you're like, oh, well, that jump scare didn't work because there was no music, or because you can see the person slightly out of frame, or something like that. And then here's a quick example. I want to look at Mario Party. And there are a lot of Mario Parties, so pretend I'm talking about the good ones. The ones I have on screen right now are theoretically the good ones, according to friends and tier lists. And for those who haven't played, Mario Party is just a local party game to play with friends. You can choose a few different boards to play on. There are different characters to play as and lots of different mini games to play. You earn coins during mini games to buy stars and power-ups, and the player with the most stars at the end of the game wins. So fairly popular series, has done very well. Total series has sold about 6 million copies, and even the bad games within the main series, so the ones that have the numbers in them, have scored around 70%, 7 out of 10s. So it's a very popular game series, has been going on for a long time, and is fairly successful. Even the games people don't really like end up being successful because it's Mario Party. But if we take out the Mario IP and the fact that that's a very recognizable thing, these games are just competitive local party games. Anyone can pick them up. They're pretty quick and easy to play, assuming you choose a shorter board or something. And then on the game design side, the mechanics fairly easy to make one of these party games. It gets a little harder with all the moving parts of each mini game and board designs, which I'm not saying are easy. Those are probably very difficult to make. But in general, the game as a whole is easier to make because the mini games don't need to interact with each other, and neither do the boards. You can make independent things that just need to be good on their own. And as for the mini games, a lot of difficulty will come from just making enough of them for the game to feel whole. I know Mario Party for Switch has that issue where you can replay the same mini games, I think, in the same playthrough. But this idea of a competitive party game that anyone can pick up is fairly easy genre to just make, right? Just slap any IP or original character on it, and people will understand how to pick it up, and they might just because it's easy. So theoretically, should be an easy way to make games. Instant success. Just look at Mario Party. All I have to do is make mini games and a couple boards. Simple enough. Except no. I know game design is very difficult and there are a lot of moving parts. But both of these games that are currently on screen, both essentially Mario Party, different IPs. They scored lower by critics, and even the users that did score higher, almost all the reviews had nostalgia in it. I think Shrek ended up scoring higher, but most people in the comments were just like, haha, Shrek, fun game. But both of these came out around 2002, around the same time Mario Party 4 came out, which I think is one of the good ones. And both games more or less follow the same format. They all have power-ups, mini-games, coins, boards to traverse, etc., etc. So more or less just direct rip-offs of Mario Party. And then a lot of the criticism that came into these games was boring or bland level design, ugly characters, although I don't know if I agree with that, but whatever. And then lackluster or repetitive minigames. Specifically in Pac-Man's case, a lot of the minigames when I was watching playthroughs would repeat within the same playthrough, the same one board. I don't know what you call play session. It's probably a better word. And a lot of the overlap and criticism also makes sense because they were developed by the same developers and released within months of each other, which could add into some of the issues that they face. But even the mini games within the games that looked similar to ones that we'd find in Mario Party seemed off, if that makes sense. It's hard to explain, but you can tell it's the same thing with a different slap of paint, but it still didn't seem to be the same feeling, if that makes sense. But yeah, both these games follow the same followed the same pattern and still wound up not being too great when you take nostalgia out of the equation. And I know a lot of people are probably thinking or saying, well, they're not great because they're rushed or cash grabs or whatever. And you're probably right. I think when they came out, it was during the Shrek craze, so of course there's a Shrek game. But I can't say the same for Pac-Man because I'm sure the Pac-Man phase wasn't happening around 2002. I love Pac-Man as much as everyone else, but you know. And even if both the games were to just ride off the coattails of Mario Party to make money, that's what we're all trying to do as game developers. We're trying to make money and just get paid. And the game designers who were working on these games still have skill and talent, even though they were working on just these random IP games that were just Mario Party. And they still understand design. But in these cases, what it feels like is that probably more the publishers than the devs, but still saw the base of what made Mario Party successful and ran with it, trying to just recreate that success rather than understanding what specifically made those games good. But so, yeah, I have a couple minutes for questions, but I said a lot in the past 25-ish minutes that I've been talking. So to sum up, bad media is pretty cool. You should look at the failures of things around you so that you can avoid them rather than just looking at your own personal failures. And yeah, it's bad media pretty cool, has interesting ideas, things to look at. I know a lot of bad media can be written off as like a punchline or something that's so frustrating that it's just really not worth your time. But hopefully some of the things I said can help you rethink it, to look at the salvageable parts of things that aren't great and how you can use them to better understand why something has failed or to avoid the pitfall in the future. Yeah, either way, thanks for coming by. There's a QR code to follow me on Twitter, or my just Twitter handle is there. Thanks. I think there's a couple minutes if anyone wants to ask me any questions. Hi.
Hi, Kim. Great talk. I got to thinking about demakes, and I was wondering if you think there's any sort of like, what are your thoughts on demakes, and do you think there's a future for that sort of bringing game design to that revisualizing thing of like making, you know, Resident Evil 8 look like a PlayStation 1 game?
Yeah, I kind of love the resurgence that I've seen of a lot of people like getting the PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2-esque graphics on things. And I think there's like probably some reason why we're doing that. Because it's obviously not for the graphics, right? There's something about those older games, no matter how frustrating maybe some of the mechanics were, or awkward. I know some had like fixed camera angles that were really weird, but there was something about that, and it might just be nostalgia, honestly, that makes us really like them. But I think it's interesting that we are moving into that more, like, almost going opposite. I don't know if it's a specifically indie thing, whereas AAA gets more realistic, indie seems to just go back to older and older graphics. But I think it's very interesting that we're doing that.
Hey, Cam, I was wondering, are you defining bad media as really just low production quality? You gave a lot of examples of buggy games or games which were incomplete and unsuccessfully executed maneuvers, which could have been better done. But other people seem to have defined bad media somewhat differently, such as George Orwell and G.K. Chesterton talking about good, bad books, which were, say, frankly, escapist literature as opposed to serious works. Do you have anything to say along that dimension?
Yeah, so like you said here, some of the things were buggy. Although when I'm looking at bad media, I'm mostly just looking at things that kind of slightly worse than so bad it's good media, if that makes sense. But within that range, I don't think they necessarily have to be low production or low quality. I think there's a lot of things that are high production that end up doing poorly, probably more recently with movies during COVID and things. But when you say like good, bad books, I'm not sure is that like so bad it's good? Is that?
Well, no, it's works such as Orwell's examples are rather old, but say the children's books of E. Nesbit, which I certainly read as a child, they'd lasted more than 100 years. Or Sherlock Holmes, actually, was, I think, one of G.K. Chesterton's examples. Sherlock Holmes is not great literature, but it's also of H. Rider Haggard or Robert Howard, who gave us Conan. Again, these are, I agree, problematic works also, but no one at the time or since has ever considered those to be serious literature. But man, have they stuck as cultural memes.
Yeah. So I'm going to quickly answer your question because we're over time. But yeah, I think those would also go into it. I think the examples that I have were more things that are just like specifically that I know, so I can talk about them easier. But yeah, I think those would go into the same, genre-esque that I'm talking about. Since, like you said, Sherlock Holmes, it's been adapted so many times. It's a very interesting concept, but like you said, probably not written as well. So yeah, I think it could definitely also include those. My examples are probably just because of what I'm more familiar with. But yeah, thank you.